Welcome, I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you are listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom, as we welcome today The Lost Voice, with John Studi and Jacob Nelson.
Welcome to the Lost Voice radio program. This is Jacob Nelson, along with, Studi's so great we need two people to replace him. So we have Jonathan Schwartzbauer and Justin Zimmich. Welcome.
Thanks, Jake.
Hey, thanks, Jake.
Yeah.
All
right, moving on. Great contribution, Justin. So on the show today, as always, we seek to rediscover the lost voice of wisdom, which first spoke to Socrates some 2,300 years ago. And that wisdom we will continue this week talking about church music. We were going to talk about the beauty of church music, but the two deviants I have with me want to talk about negative things still. So
we're going to do both.
We will do both. Yeah, we definitely want to, include some hope for our listeners as well. But one thing I need to just throw out, two things actually. One, I apologize, listeners, about any sound quality issues over the last few weeks. My recording MacBook found its way down a flight of concrete steps a few weeks ago.
Intentional or non-intentional?
Non-intentional. And it's currently behind me and looking quite sad. So still figuring out the new recording equipment. So I apologize for any sound technicality issue things.
And I apologize for myself.
Well, that's fair.
I apologize for nothing.
That seems about right.
Yeah.
All right.
Secondly, also, we are... we've been surpassed. The Lost Voice radio show has been surpassed.
What?
We were, I believe, the number one rated show on WCAT Radio. We've fallen to number 6 behind a dead guy.
That's really kind of depressing.
To be fair, though, Dr. Richard Garrity is a phenomenal man. Rest in peace, his soul. But he is the number 5th rated show, and his lectures are fantastic. So I highly recommend.
Oh, well, that's okay then.
Yeah. I would like to note that I got 100% in my class with him on the Nicomachean Ethics.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well done.
I was happy about that. Yeah. But, so anyway, we have a lot of work to do. We have some catching up to do here.
All right, well, let's catch up.
We want to be excellent. Yes.
Yes.
Gentlemen, generally
speaking, yes.
Well, I would say always, probably.
Oh,
Yeah. Not even generally.
Yeah, yeah.
Gloria, Nick, Chelsea, stay, for the greater, that's about Gloria, I don't know. It's whatever the Jesuit motto is. It's for the greater glory.
All for the greater honor and glory of God.
Yes.
I like to add in a Lord, conform my will to yours at the end of that. It's a good morning offering.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, we can have, Studi and I usually have like 5 to 10 minutes of obligatory nonsense. We've gotten up to 3 minutes now between the three of us. To be fair, most of the obligatory nonsense is just Studi rambling about stuff.
Right.
Well, the nonsense is obligatory, though. Therefore,
that's true.
We have an obligation to fulfill the time allotment for obligatory nonsense.
Is there a, say, United States conference of radio shows that can dispense us from that obligation?
That is a good question. Jason, do you know?
If not, there should be. I'm going to start it.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
It'll give me something to do where I can be self-important or something.
Yes. Speaking of which, I have a proposition for the two of you to work on something. But we'll talk about that later.
All right. Well, I look forward to that.
Yeah, it's fun talking on the radio show as if there's no other listeners.
Yeah.
And they don't know what we're talking about.
Well, I don't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, I mean...
Well, when I've listened in the past, it does sound like just you and Studi in a room.
But it's so much fun.
Talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And that's what's engaging.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
That's why I listen to it. I wouldn't listen to it otherwise.
Sounds like we're at Perkins or something. Which actually was a thing that happened.
By the way, one of my RCIA candidates, the both of you would love. He is so into sci-fi, and every week he talks about the zombie apocalypse.
Oh my gosh.
Fantastic.
That might be a little bit too far gone, but hey.
He's also in his 40s. He's like a totally chill dude and awesome. But,
Father Matthew would probably like him as well.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the world, our bodies will be resurrected.
Right.
Yep. They'll be perfected. I mean, zombie bodies are not perfected.
They're usually rotting a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. Just gross.
So it'll be like the perfect zombie apocalypse.
But is it really a zombie, though?
Well, we have to remember the bodies of the damned also get raised, too. And their bodies
there will actually
zombie apocalypse.
There will actually be a zombie apocalypse then.
My goodness.
The things
because it'll be after the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Well, it's apocalypse means revelations.
Yeah. The things we discover on the Lost Voice radio program.
Yeah. So now
rediscovering
the
Lost Voice of Wisdom.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Fantastic.
So what we now have to encourage is go to confession, die in sanctifying grace so that you are not a zombie in the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's how you survive the zombie apocalypse.
Exactly.
The sacraments.
Yes.
So the Walking Dead got it wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, guns help.
Yeah, guns help. I mean, there is that battle of Gog and Magog and whatever.
Right.
That
Yeah. I know another obligatory nonsense thing we can talk about. Go-kart racing.
Oh my goodness, that was fun.
A couple weeks ago, it just so happened that we were able to go go-karting for all of you listeners out there at this place in the Twin Cities, where the electric go-karts indoors go about 45 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. It was quite fast. There were a couple of head-on collisions.
Were there a couple?
Well, you and Studi had the head-on collision.
Oh, that was brutal.
And then Studi bumped me head-on. Like, I got turned around.
I also pushed you head-on a little bit.
Yeah. I spun out a couple times on that last lap.
So,
but it was fun.
Go-karts that are electric and go 45 miles an hour handle quite differently than the old-school gas ones. And so the first turn, I didn't brake.
Who breaks anyway?
Right, as quickly as I should have, and that caused me to spin out, and I instantly saw Studi coming at me. He said he hit the brakes. I don't know if he really did.
He probably accelerated.
I think he had it out for me.
Yeah.
But I still have some race results here.
Oh,
fantastic!
So I would like to note that during this race, I came in first.
On
so
okay,
golf claps. Yeah. With a race time of 21.139 seconds. Well, that's the best lap.
Okay.
Blorkins, which I believe was Justin, your nickname.
Yeah.
Blorkins.
Second at 21.739, so you're a little over a half second behind me.
Yeah.
Waba, 22.579, so you're about a second and a half behind me.
Okay.
And then Studi was last at 22.589, so he was 1/100th of a second slower than you. So good work to you. It has to be the weight difference.
It could be the weight difference.
Yeah.
It could be his lack of a soul.
Well, how would that affect it?
Well, because he doesn't really have the drive and ambition that a soul
Even Studi would be proud of that one.
Pretty fantastic.
It actually hurts a little bit.
Yeah. I will say, though, overall, because we did 3 races, I came in first with the greatest amount of points at 1265. Jonathan, you came in with 1225, which coincidentally is the year St. Thomas was born.
Hey!
So good for you.
Nice.
Mr. Blorkins, where did that even come from?
I don't remember exactly. I just remember for some, I don't know. I came up with a name for something. And
Let me guess, that name was Blorkins.
Well, the name was Nathaniel Blorkins.
Okay.
Because I was like, I had to come up with a stupid name. Nathaniel Blorkins. That's
a pretty stupid name.
Yeah. And so I kind of kept Blorkins for a few days.
So the last place was our good buddy Studi at 11:49. So anyway, fun times. Nobody died.
Yeah.
I got a bruised rib.
Did you really?
Yeah. It actually hurts more now than it did
really
the week before. Yeah. Even though the bruise and stuff, it doesn't look nasty.
That was on 10/23, so that was like 10 days ago.
Yeah. It was pretty much this past Sunday is when it really started to hurt, doing things like coughing and inhaling.
Breathing.
You must be getting old there. Which is funny because of us, I'm the oldest.
You are the oldest. I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
I look the oldest.
You look the oldest by far.
I'm probably also the most mature.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I'm not going to
Actually, Justin might be the most mature.
No.
Yeah.
The only one who hasn't gotten married yet is the most mature.
Yeah.
Well, and actually the order of marriage would probably go from the most immature to the most mature.
What do you mean?
Well, I was the most immature and I got married first. Then Studi. Because he's pretty immature, but he's
Yeah.
not quite as immature as I am.
Yeah.
And then you got married,
Right.
and you're the most mature, or second most.
Yeah.
And then Justin
Yeah, that makes sense.
still isn't married.
Yeah.
Yet.
I haven't ruined the life of a poor girl just yet.
Not yet.
Are you saying that we all ruined our wives' lives?
No, I'm saying I would ruin
Oh, okay.
my life.
Good save. Yeah, good save there, Justin. Oh, boy. Well, that covers 10 minutes of obligatory nonsense.
That was nonsensical.
It flies by.
Yay! Achievement accomplished.
Should we just ask Justin to leave? He doesn't.
That would be
kind of mean, though.
What?
It would be understandable.
Well, what would be meaner? Having him stay and torture the audience, or asking him to leave and only hurting his solitary feelings?
Right. Yeah.
Justin, leave.
No,
right.
we need Justin here. By the way, Justin, it came up, I think, on last week's program, or I don't know, maybe it was in a private conversation. What degree do you actually hold?
I have a BA in theology with a minor in philosophy.
Okay, because I thought it was a degree in philosophy.
No. My degree is actually theology with the minor in philosophy.
Pretty good at philosophizing.
You seem to much prefer philosophy. Okay.
It's tough. It's tough. I kind of ebb and flow a bit with the philosophy and the theology.
You do know that our audience can't see your hand motions, right?
I mean,
His hands were doing sort of an ebb and flow motion of a bit of a wiggle.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Very,
I'm
very
sorry.
Italian of you.
Forget about it.
Yeah, I do things.
Justin, what's your favorite subject to speak of?
In realms of theology and philosophy,
Yeah.
that would generally fall under the lines of anthropology.
Oh, okay.
Like philosophical theological anthropology.
Have you read D.Q. McInerney's book, Philosophical Anthropology?
I am actually about somewhere between 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through it.
Great.
It's fantastic.
It is a fantastic book.
It really is.
Anybody out there who wants to know about, what makes a human, please read D.Q. McInerney's book, Philosophical Anthropology. It is absolutely fantastic. He's a brilliant Thomist of our time.
Yes, he is.
I'm studying it for a second time. I studied it in my first round of master's studies, and now I have to do it again in this round.
Fantastic.
So this class is going well. Yes. Waba, what's your favorite area of study and speaking and ranting and such?
I would probably have to say liturgy, actually.
Okay.
I don't know, it's, how we worship. It's the rituals we follow that give glory to God. And it's also probably the area that, for me, seems to hit the pavement more often than not. Where the rubber meets the road.
Right,
It's the
yeah. Okay,
I'm sorry,
I was that for a minute.
I'm imagining like a face plant on pavement.
Yeah.
Well,
Is that like
I don't
when a
know.
priest trips coming down the steps?
Oh dear.
That would be
That'd be terrible. That would be
I
terrible.
don't know, well, sometimes I want my face to hit pavement when I hear some of the horrible music.
That's fair.
That is, that is worse than, say, Michael Jackson's "We Are the World."
You listened last week.
I did.
So today we will talk about maybe another song or two that we need to be wary of as Catholics in our worship. And it's important we talk about this because the church stands and falls with the liturgy. The way the liturgy goes in a parish is the way the parish goes. And so for us, we need to understand that the beauty and effort we put into the liturgical celebrations is going to both be an expression of and a directive for the parish at hand. Mm-hmm. And so, if you walk into a parish and they're doing a polka mass, which is not really liturgically sound
At all. Even a little bit. It's just...
it tells you something of the community, but it also gives the directives to the community of how to continue down the path they're going down. And so it's important that as we look at liturgy, we understand that the church rises and falls with faithfulness to the liturgical norms. Because the liturgy is the source and summit of our faith, the Eucharist is, but the liturgy that surrounds it in the holy sacrifice of the Mass or divine liturgy, depending on which rite you are a part of. But if that's the noblest expression of our faith and we express it poorly or with little effort or with some kind of ugliness or some heresy mixed in, that says something about our faith as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so it's important that we get liturgy right. It doesn't matter what evangelization kind of effort we put forth if we are not rooted in the proper understanding and expression of the liturgy. Those evangelization efforts will fail. I would say it's on a sliding scale that the more faithful we are to the liturgy, the more our evangelization will be effective. The less faithful we are to the liturgy, the less our evangelization will be effective. It's not simply a black and white matter. It's a sliding scale, so to speak.
Right, but there is a direct correlation between the two.
Right.
Because there's the old saying, lex orandi, lex credendi, which is, how we pray is how we believe.
Yes.
And so if we are praying in an inadequate way, or even worse, in a disrespectful or disobedient way, our faith will eventually, barring exceptions, of course, be less faithful. It will be less obedient. It will be less submitted to the divine head, and thus our evangelization efforts will be to naught, because ultimately evangelization and conversions of heart are not done by us, but rather they're done by the Holy Spirit. And so we have to pray in an appropriate way in order for our evangelization efforts to be successful.
Yes. So I have, I got to pull it up here. I have an excerpt from, oh, you guys will enjoy this. I don't know what you want to do. We have three things. I want to go through this excerpt once I can find it, and I'll tell you exactly who it's from. I think his name was like E.L. Menkins. This guy familiar. From about 100 years ago. Once I find it, so we'll go through that, because it's quite eye-opening once we actually read what he has to say. He was not a Catholic. In fact, he was very anti-religion in general. And then you guys wanted to go through one particular song.
Well, Justin specifically did, and I think I'm down for that.
I mean, our guest host, so maybe you can each pick a song that you would like to speak on and go through a little bit. We do want to have some, maybe some tact, and I don't know, maybe not. Why start now? Right? But and then we want to talk about some beautiful things that maybe our listeners could take into their daily lives and use in a form of prayer at home. So it's not just about negativity, because negativity is fun at times, but it's not really something that builds us up. And we here on the Lost Voice Radio Show, we want the voice of wisdom to build us up. So I don't know what order you guys would like to go in, but all
right. Well, why don't we just start with the excerpt? Maybe have a little conversation about that, then move into the bad, and then end with the good, so that we leave on a positive note.
It'll be parallel to how you introduced all these steps.
Okay. Part of the problem, though, is I have not yet found that.
Fair enough.
I am not prepared. In part because I read this about a week ago and I knew I wanted to bring it up in the show, and then I forgot about it until we started talking. So,
fantastic.
Okay, well, I think one thing that would be good to bring up while you're looking for that is exactly what the purpose of liturgical music is.
We went through that last week.
Oh, did you?
We did.
I missed that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, well.
And he said he listened.
I did listen. I did listen. I must have missed that. I don't know.
Now, Justin, you're just trying to get back into the good graces of the show and be the most faithful listener.
My motivations are my own.
Well, yeah, whose else would they be? They're yours.
I do remember talking about that. Yeah, okay.
Oh,
that was there.
Studi, when are you coming back? I miss you.
Yeah.
So we could go through, Justin, your song, if you would like.
Okay. Now, to correct things a little bit, I wasn't really demanding or desiring to rant about music.
False.
That's not what it sounded like.
I simply was surprised when listening to the past two shows that a particular song wasn't brought up when in past conversations with Jake and Studi.
Yes.
I figured
that usually does come up.
So I think it's important before we get into the song to maybe give a little forewarning that this might actually upset some people because it is a very, very well-loved song.
It is. It's a very popular song. A lot of people really do love it. And there are true elements within the song.
Yeah, and actually, I like the song. Actually,
Oh, I do too.
It's a great song, but
Yep. But there are a few problems with the song that make it, in its nature, unfit for liturgy. And the song is...
Would you say that there's heresy within it? Or is it just an improper...
I'd say there's heresy in it.
All right.
Okay.
There are...
You walk us through this.
Yeah.
I will. Unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, I can...
Fantastic.
Here it is.
Fantastic.
There you go.
Right there. The wonders of modern technology.
That's right. Supercomputer in your hand.
Oh, this isn't the whole one.
Oh
boy.
But that's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Well, I can find the full thing.
The song is... Dun 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 dun! Amazing Grace.
Amazing. I shouldn't sing. Never mind.
That's better than what I could do.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Is that the full lyrics?
I believe
It looks like it's 7 verses, so it should be.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
Alright, so
Yeah.
what could
Yeah.
possibly be wrong with Amazing Grace?
I mean, Grace is amazing.
It is.
It is amazing. Grace really is amazing.
Yeah.
But there's a
the life
problem
of God being
with...
given
You're just a hateful
people.
bigot, Justin.
I
Bigots.
am. Yep, I'm a hateful bigot. Though, dun 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 dun, you can't have hate without love.
Okay, well, we
So
love Studi
if
and
you
hate
love, if you love,
no.
Sad.
if you love goodness, which one ought to, then you ought to hate that which is not good. That is not good.
So evil.
So
Hate.
Carry on.
Yes.
Carry on.
It's not such a bad thing. Anyway, Amazing Grace. The first issue with Amazing Grace is in the first stanza, as you can call it, that saved a wretch like me.
But you are wretched, Justin.
Thanks.
I think I know where you're going with this.
The problem is that, yes, we are fallen human beings due to Adam's sin. We are born in original sin. We are fallen. However, we are not fully depraved. We are not complete and utter wretches innately.
Right.
It is not in our very nature to be wretches. Total depravity is a Protestant notion, came up by Calvin.
Specifically a Calvinist notion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And thus, not Catholic. And since it is not Catholic and it is Protestant in nature, it should not be utilized in the liturgy,
Right.
in the divine and holy sacrifice of the Mass. Another problem with Amazing Grace, and oftentimes this stanza isn't...
Well, can I add just one thing quick about that, too?
Oh, yeah.
Saved is in the past tense.
Right.
So it implies that we are saved when, in fact, we're not.
Yes, I'm actually getting to that, too.
Go for it. I'll just stop speaking.
In one of the... You're right, it does actually kind of emphasize that in the earlier, and I kind of missed that. But in the fifth stanza, which often isn't sung because, people want to get out of there.
Right.
They don't want to stick around and sing the whole thing.
Right, it's usually the first 3 stanzas and then the last one.
Yeah. I'll just read it out. It says, "Yea, when this flesh and heart shall fail, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace." Now, if we're singing that and actually believing that right here, right now, as the church militant here on earth, that falls into presumption. We are presuming and assuming that we are saved, that we are of the elect.
Right. Which stems from what was in the first stanza about saved.
Yes. It's not a once saved, always saved. That is a
Right.
false theology. We have to constantly strive for our salvation.
Right.
Wasn't it Calvin that said, "I've attained heaven, so I'm going to live like hell"?
Was it Calvin?
I think that was actually Luther. I'm not sure.
It was
but
one of the two.
I don't know. Luther said a lot of crazy stuff.
It was not Luther, because he had scrupulosity, so he wouldn't have talked about living like hell.
Yeah. Well, once he came along, he was saved by grace alone.
Yeah.
Then he was saved by faith alone. Then he did descend into all sorts of. He actually even said that the Decalogue, meaning the Ten Commandments, essentially should be ignored because we will then begin to sin by paying attention to them.
Yeah.
And it's just. I was looking through a bunch of quotes by him, and they're atrocious.
I feel like it was Calvin, but I could be wrong.
It could be. But long story short, Amazing Grace has heresies of total depravity and heresies of presumption, of once saved, always saved. And as such, it is not fitting in the liturgy. Even though there are merits within this song, how it actually kind of counters, to an extreme degree, counters the Pelagian heresy in Ashes, where
you can just save yourself.
Yeah, where you can just save yourself. You just, lift yourself up. Yeah, because
But don't we rise again from ashes? Thank you for the death stare. Which is a distant cousin to the Death Star.
But yes, that's my little...
Yeah.
All right.
Amazing
Thank you for
grace.
that.
Yeah, no problem.
Waba, do you have one? Or do you need some time to think? Because I found my quote.
Okay.
Difference.
No.
I've got a song in mind, and I think I need to double check.
You go ahead and do a little research.
Why don't we
do some research? So, from October 1923, a man by the name of H.L. Mencken spoke about liturgy and translation. And this is absolutely fascinating because H.L. Mencken is actually pretty anti-religion. He was an American columnist at the time. He made a lot of enemies because he was a little brash. So this will be fun. It fits right into our radio show.
Oh, boy.
Whoever it was who translated the Bible into excellent French prose is chiefly responsible for the collapse of Christianity in France. Contrariwise, the men who put the Bible into archaic, sonorous, and often unintelligible English gave Christianity a new lease of life wherever English is spoken. They did their work at a time of great theological blather and turmoil, when men of all sorts, even the least intelligent, were beginning to take a vast and unhealthy interest in exegetics and apologetics. They were far too shrewd to feed this disconcerting thirst for ideas with the Bible in plain English. The language they used was deliberately artificial, even when it was new. They thus dispersed the mob by appealing to its emotions, as a mother quiets a baby by crooning to it. The Bible that they produced was so beautiful that the great majority of men, in the face of it, could not fix their minds upon the ideas in it. To this day, it has enchanted the English-speaking peoples so effectively that, in the main, they remain Christians, at least sentimentally. Paine has assaulted them, Darwin and Huxley have assaulted them, and a multitude of other merchants of facts have assaulted them. But they still remember the 23rd Psalm when the doctor begins to shake his head. They are still moved beyond compare, though not, alas, to act, by the Sermon on the Mount, and they still turn once a year from their sordid and degrading labors to immerse themselves unashamed in the story of the manger. It is not much, but it is something. I do not admire the general run of American Bible searchers, Methodists, United Brethren, Baptists, and such vermin. But try it. Like I said, he was a little brash.
Wow.
Just a
little vermin.
But try to imagine what the average low-browed Methodist would be if he were not a Methodist, but an atheist. The Latin Church, which I constantly find myself admiring, despite its frequent astounding imbecilities, has always kept clearly before it the fact that religion is not a syllogism, but a poem. It is accused by Protestant dervishes of withholding the Bible from the people. To some extent, this is true. To the same extent, the Church is wise. Again, to the same extent, it is prosperous. Its toying with ideas in the main have been confined to its clergy, and they have commonly reduced the business to a harmless play of technicalities. The awful concepts of heaven and hell brought down to the level of a dispute of doctors in long gowns. eager only to dazzle other doctors. Its greatest theologians remain unknown to 99% of its adherents. Rome, indeed, has not only preserved the original poetry in Christianity, it has also made capital additions to that poetry. For example, the poetry of the saints, of Mary, and of the liturgy itself. A solemn high mass must be 1,000 times as impressive to a man with any genuine religious sense in him as the most powerful sermon ever roared under the big top by a Presbyterian auctioneer of God. In the face of such overwhelming beauty, it is not necessary to belabor the faithful with logic. They are better convinced by letting them alone. Preaching is not an essential part of the Latin ceremonial. It was very little employed in the early church, which is wrong.
Right.
But going on. And I am convinced that good effects would flow from abandoning it today. Well, probably for some preachers, but
Yeah.
I would say we should not abandon our homilies.
No, right.
He says, or at all events, reducing it to a few sentences more or less formal. In the United States, the Latin brethren have been seduced by the example of the Protestants, who commonly transform an act of worship into a puerile intellectual exercise. Instead of approaching God in fear and wonder, these Protestants settle back in their pews, cross their legs, and listen to an ignoramus try to prove that he is a better theologian than the Pope. This folly the Romans now slide into. Their clergy begin to grow argumentative, doctrinaire, ridiculous. It is a pity. A bishop in his robes, playing his part in the solemn ceremonial of the Mass, is a dignified spectacle even though he may sweat freely. The same bishop bawling against Darwin half an hour later is seen to be simply an elderly Irishman with a bald head, the son of a respectable saloon keeper in South Bend, Indiana. Let the Reverend Fathers go back to Bach. If they keep on spoiling poetry and spouting ideas, the day will come when some extra bombastic deacon will astound humanity and insult God by proposing to translate the liturgy into American, that all the faithful may be convinced by it.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
I wish
Gentlemen?
I wish I could write like that.
Gentlemen,
Yeah.
you go right ahead. Go ahead and have fun with that.
Yeah, actually, I think he hits the nail right on the head with a lot of what goes on in churches today.
He makes a few errors.
Right. But the main point being that we've lost a sense of the beauty of worship and the beauty that's inherent in our faith. I come from a Protestant tradition, and I actually came from one in which preaching by all of the people was actually thought of as one of the highest things that can happen, is that the entire body of Christ is then functioning as that everyone preaches. Because preaching is essentially, the high point. And they had music, but a lot of it was, some of it was some, okay hymns, but Amazing Grace was obviously one of the best, and they were, filled with heresy. But they were opposed to even putting up decorations, aside from maybe a couple of plants in their church buildings, because they found that was, there was no point to religious symbols, and that it took away from the reality of who Christ is. But then coming into the church and seeing all of the beauty and stuff, and my goodness, the first time I saw a Latin high mass was just astounding in the ordinary or the extraordinary forms. Just beautiful. I couldn't understand everything that was said. In fact, I couldn't understand most of what was going on and even what part of the Mass it was, but I knew that I had experienced something transcendent.
And you know what's amazing? That this follows the principle that you do not need to understand in order to love.
Right.
And if we require understanding in order to love, good luck in any relationship.
Right. Yeah.
Because how many of us even understand ourselves well enough, let alone a whole other person?
Yeah.
And yet, if we require understanding for the sake of love, we would never be able to love other people. So why would we think that if we can't even understand other people, why should we be able to simply understand God?
Right.
Who is infinite.
Yes. Anyway, I thought that was a fascinating, absolutely fascinating write-up by somebody who basically hates all religion equally.
Yeah.
That he could at least see the beauty in the Latin liturgy And that's not to say that there's not a place for some vernacular. I mean, I think it's a good development in the church that the readings are read in English.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. We should be more familiar with the scriptures. But to reduce the holy sacrifice of the Mass to God Almighty simply to our vernacular language, I think is an error if it's widespread.
Right.
Perhaps times that can be beneficial so that people do have an opportunity to intellectually enter into the Mass a little bit more deeply. But again, the vernacular is the exception to the rule. Latin is still the norm in the church,
Right.
but that little fact is frequently overlooked.
Almost certainly.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought it was a fascinating write-up because what he talks about is that it's beauty that captivates. It's the poetic nature of the liturgy that captivates. It's not our own human interventions.
Right.
And so that's, again, why we are continuing a little bit on the ugly side of music, and then we will work on the beautiful side of music. So, Waba, what's the song you wanted to speak on?
The thing I was thinking was On Eagle's Wings.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that one, oh boy.
Just before we even start, that follows one of the trends of a lot of the music that we've already talked about, that we put ourselves in the place of God.
Right.
I will raise you up on eagle's wings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a general comment on that. But a few heretical points or points that could maybe negatively affect our worship there, Jonathan?
All right, well, I'm pulling up the right lyrics. I actually had a fairly... Oh, wow, I am the bread of life is here. I will raise you up. That's the one I was thinking of, not but I will raise you up. All right.
Well, they're the same, aren't they?
Well, there's a couple...
No, they're different.
I will raise you up on eagle's wings.
No. Wow. That was impressive.
Thank you.
Actually, okay, there's a surprisingly large number of songs about On Eagle's Wings.
There is another song that I will raise you up. It's different from On Eagle's Wings.
Yeah, actually, I think I was thinking of I Will Raise You Up. I look it up. I'm trying to pull it. No, this is You Raise Me Up. Well, that might be bad, too. I don't know.
At least it's not.
Well, it's not... Yeah.
Give the benefit of the doubt, I guess.
I'm trying. I don't want to take up too much time on a song that I can't quite find. Is it this one? Raise You Up. Okay.
We need like elevator music for the intro.
Doody. Oh wait, that's copywritten. Can't do that one, can we?
Well, you said duty, so I think you're
Duty doo-doo. Yeah, well, we don't have to address this, and in fact, it might be better to take some more time to focus on what's good, because you had 2 weeks on bad.
It's true.
And to be perfectly honest,
there's a lot of fans.
I don't really like focusing on the bad. I mean, it's good to be aware of what the bad is in order to
laugh, cry,
to laugh and to cry,
to be happy, sad,
and to be on guard when you go into a church and you hear it to not absorb the heresy.
Right. So I'm going to just throw one out there. One of my favorite pieces ever written for the liturgy is the Dies Irae by Mozart.
Oh, yes.
And everybody and the people rejoice.
Yeah.
Yay.
And that was that was actually sung in a number of places yesterday.
Yes.
For All Souls Day.
No, not yesterday. A few days ago.
Well, yesterday was All Souls Day.
Yes. No, last Thursday was.
This is Friday.
It's Friday.
Oh, wait.
Oh, right. Well, as we...
I apologize for my co-host.
We're terrible. We don't know how things work.
Should I, Yeah.
You mean today's Tuesday?
Yes. Tuesday's coming. Did you bring your coat?
I'm just, I'm behind a few days.
Yes. That's okay. Because we are now listening to the Day of Wrath. Dies Irae.
I love this song so much.
Now, this is not even fitting to do a Liturgy Science Theater 3000 with.
No.
Just taking the beauty. You know. Okay, so this Mass is a Requiem Mass. It's written for two reasons. One, for funerals, and two, for All Souls Day. Many of the great composers wrote Requiems. Mozart's is the most famous, but Beethoven wrote one. The one written by Verdi is actually, I think, on par with Mozart's.
Yeah.
It's stunning.
Yeah.
It also exists in a traditional chant form as well.
Yes. Yep. So there are something like 10 or 12 parts to the Requiem that are sung, and the vast majority of the Mass is sung.
Yes.
We have a great gift here in the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis, at the Church of St. Agnes, that they have the Minnesota Catholic Chorale, a beautiful choir. I believe some of them are actually a part of the St. Paul Chamber Choir or something like that. And the orchestra there, many of them are professional musicians as well. And every All Souls Day, they do the Mozart Requiem Mass. It's absolutely stunning to hear this music that was originally written for the Mass to be done in the Mass. It's a completely different experience than listening to it at Orchestra Hall. But to give maybe an exclamation point on why this is superior music to what we've been talking about is a quick read-through of the English translation of the Requiem. So if you would indulge. Grant them eternal rest, Lord, and let perpetual light shine on them. You are praised, God, in Zion, and homage will be paid to you in Jerusalem. Hear my prayer. To you all flesh will come. Grant them eternal rest, Lord, and let perpetual light shine on them. And then the sequence, which the first part is the Dies Irae, is day of wrath, day of anger, will dissolve the world in ashes. See, this is a proper song about ashes. Okay. As foretold by David and the Sibyl, great trembling there will be when the judge descends from heaven to examine all things closely. And then the second part is the tuba mirum. The trumpet will send its wondrous sound throughout earth's sepulchres and gather all before the throne. Death and nature will be astounded when all creation rises again. To answer the judgment, a book will be brought forth, in which all will be written, by which the world will be judged. When the judge takes his place, what is hidden will be revealed, nothing will remain unavenged. What shall a wretch like me say? Who shall intercede for me when the just ones need mercy? And, by the way, the English wretch is not the same wretch as in Amazing Grace.
It's the throw-up wretch.
The Latin is, it looks like it's miser, which would be miserable.
Right.
So miserable is a bit different from wretch.
Yes.
The original Latin is highly poetic. The English is not quite as poetic because it's not written in English.
Right.
It's written in Latin. I'm not a great Latin scholar. I can hardly even pronounce it. But for instance, one part of the tuba mirum is liber scriptus proferitur in quo totum continetur unde mundus judicator. And so the beauty of Latin, I mean, it's such a poetic language. And then the Rex Tremendi comes, King of tremendous majesty, who freely saves those worthy ones. Save me, source of mercy. And, we could go through the whole thing, but it's absolutely astounding, the music that was brought forth by the likes of, in this case, Mozart. And one of my favorite ones, the Lacrimosa. That day of tears and mourning, when from the ashes shall rise all humanity to be judged. Spare us by your mercy, Lord. Gentle Lord Jesus, grant them eternal rest. Notice in the ashes of this, we are not raising ourselves. It's not simply a raising from the ashes to glory, but all will be raised from the ashes, and all of humanity will be judged.
Right.
And unless we actually admit that, then we can't ask for God to spare us by his mercy. If we presume our own salvation, there's no need to ask for mercy.
Right. Yeah, or if others are presuming your mercy, or presuming your salvation, then what happens when you're in purgatory?
Yes, how sad.
So often in funeral masses that are said today, which are often even termed requiem mass or resurrection masses, which is absolutely
presumptuous.
Yeah. Basically, the person is prematurely canonized. As they were such a great person, and they're in heaven now with God.
They're in a better place. Well, I sure hope they are.
Yeah, well, right. Purgatory is a better place because you're closer to God, but it's not going to be pleasant there.
It's also not guaranteed.
Right.
Here's the Lacrimosa, by the way.
Oh, this is so good, too.
It is. The whole thing.
So much.
And notice how the music really captures the emotion.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the music we were talking about is more like a grade school sing-along.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We could almost just let the music speak for itself.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Do you guys have any favorites that you want to talk about?
Well, honestly, you actually mentioned it. Now, this might be because it's been stuck in my head, but I've had the privilege of actually chanting in 2 Requiem Masses recently. I chanted for...
Listen to you.
No,
really, I want to listen to you.
Maybe later.
All right.
But the Saturday prior to All Saints and All Souls Day, I actually sang or chanted at a requiem that was an actual funeral for someone at Sacred Heart. Okay. That was the first requiem I went to that was an actual funeral for someone. The only other requiems I've been to were for All Souls Day.
I better get a requiem when I die. Remember hear that, guys?
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It really is gorgeous. And that was also the first requiem that I attended where it was in chant. Because I've heard Mozart's Requiem at St. Agnes, which was gorgeous. And out in Washington State, a parish called Our Lady Star of the Sea, they did the Extraordinary Form of Requiem Mass on All Souls Day. And last year they did, it was by a French composer. I think his name is Duruflé. Duruflé, yep. And that one, he composed it in the 1940s, if I remember right.
Okay.
And it's actually beautiful as well, and it actually incorporates some of the Gregorian chant elements.
My deacon coworker wants Duruflé's Requiem at his funeral mass.
No, it really is beautiful.
Well, maybe we'll throw a little chant on here, but I wanted to just throw in Verdi's Requiem because it's much less known, but it's amazing. It hits you pretty hard right away.
I want to... Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good.
By the way, this is the Dies Irae, Day of Wrath.
Yes.
It makes sense how the music follows.
Yes. I wouldn't mind this, being my alarm for waking up in the morning.
Oh, I know. I've frequently thought that.
I might just set that
I'm up.
Nobody hits the snooze button with this.
No.
And you know what I think is beautiful about the Dies Irae? Is first off, it's means Day of Wrath, right?
Yes.
Which sounds like, well, that doesn't sound very nice. No, it's not.
It shouldn't be.
Right. It's a moment of judgment, and we should have a certain amount of fear
and humility.
Yes.
As regards our particular judgment and the final judgment. But also, as it comes to the end of the sequence, it starts being more a prayer of, Lord, have mercy on me. Thank you for what you have done. I wish to, partake in this, in the mercy that you have given. Please find me worthy in your sight.
Right.
Which is, very beautiful.
How can you plead for mercy if you can't admit your own state of soul?
Right.
Exactly.
And I think that, it's the fact that isn't used so often is emblematic of, just this general state of theology that exists, today, of a lack of understanding of the beauty or of what God's mercy is.
Right. Justin just got a big smile on his face. Here's Paraphrase Requiem.
Absolutely love the introit and the sanctus of this Requiem. Absolutely gorgeous.
So this is the introit. And what was the other one you loved?
The sanctus.
Okay.
The holy, holy.
Yep.
Holy, holy, holy Lord God of hosts.
Here you go. Here's a sanctus for you. Ask and you shall receive. So maybe, in an effort, because not every parish can do this, right? It's not, we don't want to leave the listeners thinking hopeless, yes, there's ugly and beautiful music, but there's not an opportunity for this beautiful music in my parish. What can be done? There's beautiful hymns that don't need a full choir, they don't need a full orchestra. I think one adaptation, and some people go different ways because it's taking secular music and making it spiritual, but one of the ones I like is God Beyond All Praising, which, I don't know how you guys feel, but I don't really care because I'm my own man. Which I think, it's a good example of what could be done at an average parish.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is taken from the Song of the Planets. I forget the composer.
The Jupiter and all those.
Right. Yeah. I can't think of his name.
Yeah, but anyway, I think
certain things can be baptized essentially and be used by the
coffee
church.
was baptized.
Exactly. It was the devil's drink.
It was.
I mean, we can think of the song. It uses one of Beethoven's symphonies, but the joyful, joyful, we adore thee. The lyrics in and of themselves, they aren't liturgical or religious in any sense, but it can be adapted.
Right. Now, there's 50 different songs that use that. Music.
Yes.
Some are good, some are not.
Yes.
So just as well as secular music can be baptized, it can also be destroyed even further.
Yes.
That's true too.
But I think this is a great example of what even a very small choir, you could even have a cantor sing this.
Right.
Yep.
But again, I think it's key that you have an organ for this, not a piano.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that can be done in your average parish, that I think gets overlooked a lot because it seems to be something, it's high. It's Gregorian chant.
Yeah.
Gregorian chant is really quite simple. And especially what's used typically in the Mass, especially for the propers and things.
Missa de Angelis.
Yeah, it's so... it's really easy to understand. It's easy to read. And in fact, I would say it's easier for your average layperson to read than ordinary
chant
musical
is
notation.
Way easier than Marty Hagen, David Haas, and Dan Schuh.
Yeah.
The melodies that they use are impossible for somebody with a voice like mine.
Yeah.
They're absolutely impossible. But chant, anybody can chant. It's really not as hard as it seems. This is the Kyrie from the Missa de Angelis Gregorian chant.
And
it's really not that hard.
Yeah, and another interesting thing to note, I think the Missa de Angelis, but certainly others of chants that are still used today, were actually originally created before there was any form of musical notation.
Right.
At all. Mm-hmm. So we're talking, 300, 400 AD. These are ancient hymns.
So one thing I would suggest, if you people listening out there want to improve the music in your parish, find a good hymnal.
Yeah.
Get rid of the gather hymnals. Get rid of the whatever other hymnals.
Collegeville.
Right. The Collegeville isn't as bad as The Gather.
No, it's not. Collegeville has good songs in it.
The parish that my wife and I belong to, in just a few weeks, we are so excited. They're changing the missals. We're getting new missals.
What are they changing it to?
The Ignatius Pew Missal. Ooh. It's got a large amount of chant, a large amount of traditional, beautiful Catholic hymns, and then there's like one song each from Marty Hagen, Dan Schuett, and David Haas, and I think it's like a nod to be like, we're trying to bridge the gap. Are they like,
I was like, is that the nod to Judas?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, he was an apostle.
Yep.
So
he was.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you can find good hymnals out there, and the Ignatius Pew Missal is one of them. Mm-hmm. There's some other ones, and maybe next week we'll provide some resources for our listeners in case they want to help move that along. And I wouldn't go into pastor and say, Father, the music is terrible, we need to change it. Mm-hmm. Say, I would like to find a way to get these donated. Our missals they're beat up, they're out of date.
Right.
I will help fundraise so that we can buy new missals if we do this one. Mm-hmm. Or if we do one of this list. Father, take a look and be a partner. Don't go in slamming doors.
Right.
Because otherwise you end up with songs like this.
Oh no. What is it going to be?
Here I was like in the mood of beauty.
Oh.
And the people lamented. Oh. In case you're my wife, just turn the radio off right now. Because I know how much you don't like this song. Oops. Hang on.
Oh dear. I'm nervous.
It's not the My Little Pony Gloria, is it?
What?
There's a My Little Pony Gloria. Well, it was what was sung at a certain parish we're very familiar with for a long time.
Yeah. We gather at the river.
I need to throw things!
You're like Studi. Studi throws his wallet almost every week.
Well, to make sure it's added.
Fair enough. Wallet has been thrown. So, just to Justin's dancing. We should
stop! No!
Can we please put a video of your dancing on our webpage?
Go for it.
Sweet.
Kicking your legs out.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to cleanse our heads and give us some hope as we go, we'll listen to the song twos from Missa de Angelis. Mm-hmm. Just so we can, delve in the beauty of the Roman liturgy.
Yeah.
And then we'll wrap up for the day and one more week under our belt.
Excellent.
Right.
We might have gotten a little feedback on that, and I apologize, but it's time to wrap up anyway. So I would like to thank both Justin and Jonathan for joining me this week. It takes two men to fill the seat of Studi.
He's a big man.
He is.
He has big personality.
I'd say big personality. I'm actually bigger than Studi is.
Well, yeah.
But,
Very large personality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we mean that in the most beautiful way possible in case you're listening, Studi.
Oh, of course.
Wherever you are. We'll find out next week wherever Studi went. Where in the world is Jonathan Studi?
Is he replacing Carmen Sandiego?
Well, I think he's trying to find Carmen Sandiego.
In the world is Jonathan Studi.
Yeah.
He might be in Panama.
Oh.
No. Anytime I hear Carmen Sandiego, I think of France for some reason.
I think there was often an Eiffel Tower in the background of their picture.
Think you're right. Yeah.
I usually think of San Francisco, which is odd because...
Not San Diego?
Right, I know. Right. I think when I was a young child, I didn't know the difference.
Because
words aren't different.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, letters don't matter.
Right, exactly.
But what does matter is this radio show. And so if you find any tidbits of inspiration within the gentle musings of our voices. Please pass it on to your friends and family. We pray for an increase of beautiful music in our churches across the nation, and an increase in faithfulness because of that beauty in worship. On behalf of Jonathan Schwartzbauer, known as Wabba, and Justin Zimmich, apparently Nathaniel Blorkins, Jonathan Studi, and myself, Jacob Nelson, I wish you a blessed week in the Lord.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.